I want to welcome everyone to this mayoral candidate forum on Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. I am Anthony Crowell, the Dean and President here at New York Law School and the Faculty Director of our Center for New York City and State Law, and it's an honor to welcome you all. I'm pleased that we're co-hosting this forum with New Yorkers for Parks, an old collaborator of ours, as well as their organizational partners in the Fair Play Coalition. And I just want to give a quick acknowledgement that we have Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan here, the Council Parks Committee Chair. Thank you for being here with us. And Ben will be introducing our candidates tonight who will be in part of the debate. So as New York's law school, for the past 134 years, we have engaged on the key legal and policy matters affecting New York, and we serve as a key resource and partner to government and the civic community. In fact, New York Law School's earliest classes included a number of New York City mayors, including Mayor John Perroy Mitchell, class of 1902, John F. Hyland, class of 1897, and of course, the infamous Jimmy Walker from the class of 1904. And I always like to say he's responsible for creating a permanent employment program for government ethics lawyers, of which I was one. Our graduates continue to be great leaders in our city. And today I'm very proud to say that 1/3 of them go into government service after graduation, which is an extraordinary point of pride for us and makes them and makes NYLS the second highest placer of graduates into public service of any law school in the United States. And that's why we are proud to host forums like this evening. We are experiencing a transformative moment with massive upheaval at the federal level, and all of this has profound effects on our city. That places extraordinary importance on a role that is always one of the most important elected roles in the nation, and our city's future will be shaped by this election. This is our second mayoral election hosting a forum in partnership with New Yorkers for Parks, and I want to thank their executive director, Adam Ganzer. Adam, thank you for being a great partner and for bringing your vision for this forum to us tonight. Our law school, especially our Center for New York City and State Law, has a long track record of engagement on leadership in all matters concerning open space, sustainability, and real estate. And that includes closely tracking and analyzing laws and regulations related to zonings, urban planning, and parkland, which is done by our students, faculty, alumni, and center senior fellows. And our parks and open spaces have always been invaluable and essential to making our city a welcoming place to live, work, and visit. That's why we have such strong interest in tonight's forum, as these issues impact every person's life in the city and who comes here to visit, work, or invest. The mayor is the principal leader in shaping our open spaces and parks, and tonight is it's a critical opportunity to learn more about the candidates' perspectives on achieving greener, more engaging spaces in every part of the city. I want to thank all of the candidates present today and thank them for their public service. Finally, I'm grateful to Ben Max, our program director and executive editor, who's worked very hard with New Yorkers for Parks to put together this event. Ben's been a wonderful addition to our New York Law School community and has already expanded our program offerings, highlighting so much key work taking place throughout the city and state, and has featured the leading elected and appointed officials in New York through our events, as well as on his weekly podcast, Max Politics. Thanks again, Ben, for all you do. I will now turn the program over to Adam, who will make some opening remarks as well. Adam?
Hi there, everybody. I want to thank Dean Crowell, Ben Max, the New York Law School. Our partnership has been a long one, and we're back at it again after 4 years to discuss this topic with candidates for mayor. I also want to thank the Playfair Coalition and the many partners that we've had advocating for parks. The Playfair Coalition was founded by ourselves, the League of Conservation Voters, and DC 37, now numbers over 400 organizations across the city. Every corner of New York City is represented, and all fighting for better parks for their communities. Thank you. And similarly, thanking all the candidates for being here. I know this is an issue that's important to all of you as well. On paper, New York City has an enviable park system. It is vast and comprehensive. Tens of millions of people visit our parks every single year. There are thousands of parks and playgrounds, recreation centers, forests, wetlands, pools and beaches, ball fields, and some of the most famous parks in the world. It should be the envy of cities everywhere. Unfortunately, our park system is in crisis. Global cities like London and Paris have seen the light, investing hundreds of millions of dollars to bolster a green vision to make their cities livable and attractive. Meanwhile, stateside, cities like Minneapolis, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Cincinnati, who knew? These cities are eating our lunch when it comes to parks. New York City, a city where residents rely on parks like no other, is now currently ranked just 12th in the country. How has this happened? Well, the agency continues to have its budget cut annually, and it's the last budget to get restored. The agency relies on temporary staffing and a 40-year-old maintenance model that was derived when the city was about to go bankrupt. Our leaders continue to choose not to recognize the importance of our urban forests, our street trees, in creating a healthy, cool city. They choose not to recognize the importance of developing and executing a vision for building the next era of great parks in New York City to solve this disparity of park access, which impacts so many New Yorkers. But I think it can be most saliently recognized by something I experienced with my family. When I go to a public park and one of the two of my daughters invariably has to go to the bathroom. And we go to the bathroom and the bathroom is either locked, closed, in repair, or once you get inside, it's the last place on earth you want to be. It has been more than 25 years since New York City had a mayor that prioritized a vision of building new parks. And it's been decades since we've had an administration that prioritized a parks workforce large enough to maintain our city's parks. And we are waiting for the next leader who will finally fully invest in our city's parks, not just as places where we go and spend time, but as drivers of economic growth, public health, and perhaps most importantly, as an integrated solution to mitigate climate change. Spring is upon us, New Yorkers. I've been waiting to say that for a while. Millions of us are going to be in our parks. Voters, all of them voters. They're going to be in our parks in droves. Everyone, small children, teenagers, seniors, depending on the city's parks to play, to meet their families, to meet their community, or frankly, to get away from their families and community in the city. Our park system is tremendous, and it has the potential to be the best in the world. And that's why I'm excited for this conversation tonight, to hear directly from the candidates for mayor and their vision for the future of our park system. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ben. Thanks, everybody.
All right, you want to hear from the candidates. So candidates, please come join me up here. Take your time, watch your step. All right. All right. So as you can see to the screen to my left and the screen to my right, we are joined by State Senator Zellnor Myrie from Albany. We are, at any moment, his box will shrink and there will be a second box there with State Assembly Member Zohran Mamdani, so don't be shocked when that happens. And then joining us in person, we have the Speaker of the New York City Council, Adrienne Adams. Former New York State Assembly Member Michael Blake. And former New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer. Current City Comptroller Brad Lander will also be joining us any moment. Here he comes, so you can applaud for him there. All right, and that is our roster for the evening here tonight. So Let's get right to it. Thanks again to New Yorkers for Parks and the Playfair Coalition. Thank you again to Dean Crowell and our whole team at the Center for New York City and State Law. And of course, thank you all for being here. We had well over 700 RSVPs, so roughly half of that group is watching by Zoom, hopefully, or will watch the recording. So plenty of people in the room here and then also watching us online. Great interest, of course, in this set of topics. So for most of the forum, the candidates will have 1 minute each to answer each question. There might be some quick follow-ups. We have our timekeeper, Corey, right in front of you here, candidates, who will hold up signs for 15 seconds and to wrap, and I'll jump in. Senator Myrie, I'll just give you a chance to estimate about 1 minute for each answer, and I'll jump in when you're going over. All right, we're making this all work. Okay. So let's get started here. For the first question, we're going to start with Speaker Adams here and go down the line. Senator Myrie will come to you last this time, but we'll start with you at other times. All right. So please take the first minute each to introduce yourself, but also to talk about how you see the importance of parks, recreation, and open space to New York City, and how that would be reflected in what kind of mayor you would be. 1 minute each. Speaker Adams, please begin.
Thank you so much, Ben, and good evening, everyone. I am New York City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams. I don't want to leave this part out. I am the first Black speaker and the leader of the first women majority, most historically diverse in the city of the history of New York. So proud to lead that body. And the great work that we do, I salute our chair, Shekhar Krishnan, for being here tonight also. I am running for mayor because New York needs a change. We're tired of trauma, we're tired of drama, we're tired of scandal. And on the one hand, we see scandal going out, scandal wants to come back in. I think that we deserve a whole lot better than either side of scandal and corruption for the city of New York. My leadership in the city council has been one that has always put the city first. I have negotiated successfully 3 city budgets, on my way to the 4th one, and we will do this successfully when it comes to parks. Parks has always been a priority for this city council. I have been a part of the budget negotiating team for almost 10 years on the city council, and as speaker, I have led this council to prioritize and restore, and I'll tell you a lot more about that as we go on. We have been the council of restoration, where this mayor has chosen to cut our budget funding for our parks and our green spaces year after year after year. Thank you very much.
Mr. Blake.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Michael Blake. I come to you as a former assembly member from the Bronx, serving 6 years in the assembly. We created the My Brother's Keeper program and incorporated with that Green Bronx machine so we could focus on how do we help our parks and our communities. We thank you for the opportunity here. Before this, I worked for President Obama for close to 7 years, and clearly we miss a real president to help us in our communities right now. Why are we here? Because 14% of New York City is parkland, but only 0.6% is going towards the budget. We need to have at least 1% of our city budget focused on what's going on with parks to make sure we focus in that regard. What can we do? We can hire more urban park rangers. We can actually address what's going on with tree stumps. We can make sure that our communities actually have an opportunity to be out in the community consistently. As we saw this during COVID, it is really hard to transform a community if everyone has to be inside. And so we can think about the efforts of Paseo Park out in Queens and Jackson Heights, or Make McGinnis Safe in Brooklyn, what we're doing at Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. If you are ready for the next generation of leadership, and the only candidate in this race who has actually defeated Donald Trump when I was a vice chair and has White House, State House, and local experience, my name is Michael Blake, and I hope to be your mayor and look forward to the questions on today.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
So growing up back in the day in Washington Heights, I consider myself the luckiest kid on the block, because while people didn't recognize or appreciate Uptown, we kids knew the Cloisters, we knew Marble Hill Park, we knew that we had the jewel for growing up. And these parks to me meant everything because we didn't have a lot of opportunities elsewhere. And today, as I raise my own kids, I once again appreciate parks in a way that I had not appreciated 10 years before they were born. They live in the parks, and every kid needs to have that feeling. The problem today is our 30,000 acres, they're not doing well. Some neighborhoods have all the resources, Central Park Conservancy, worthwhile organizations, and other neighborhoods do not get the funding they need. 0.6% of funding is not adequate for 30,000 acres. And the way our parks will go will define how our city goes. That was true in the fiscal crisis in the 70s, and it's very true today.
Thank you. Mr. Lander.
Thank you, Ben, and thanks everyone here. I'm New York City Controller Brad Lander, and I'm running for mayor to bring honest, effective leadership back to City Hall, to stand up and fight Donald Trump in the face of his authoritarian onslaught, and especially to deliver a safer, more affordable, more livable, and better run New York City, because it can't be safer or more affordable or more livable if it is not better run. And of course, parks are absolutely central to that. I mean, like for all of you, they just saved my life on every occasion. When I was a city council member, I made sure that every single park in my district got renovated, starting with the ones in lower income areas, activated them with programming and stewardship, and then thought, what do we do to really make them thrive? These are the places where my kids learned to walk and ride a bike and saved my life during the pandemic. And the Celebrate Brooklyn concert series in Prospect Park's the thing I look most forward to all year. So I helped bring participatory budgeting to New York City so New Yorkers could envision recreating their parks, and focused on capital projects management. So instead of being overtime and over budget on every single project, they are getting done.
Thank you.
Really grateful to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Thanks so much, Ben, and thank you all for coming tonight. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak before you and hear your questions. I have the honor of having grown up a couple of blocks away from one of the greatest parks in the Western Hemisphere, Prospect Park. It is where I learned how to ride a bike. It is where, as an asthmatic, I had some reprieve from my room, but it is also a place that has not been invested in like so many other of our parks throughout the city. You've heard the statistics already. The city does not treat parks as the saving grace that they are. We give them less in our city budget than we did during our fiscal crisis in the 70s, and it's not equitable in its access. There are parts in Brooklyn and Queens and throughout our city where it takes more than 10 minutes to get to your closest park, and that should be a source of shame for us. I want to change things as the next mayor. I want at minimum 1% of our city budget dedicated to our parks. I want to fix the capital process, have a capital assessment plan for this agency, give them discretionary funding so that they can have long-term planning, ensure that we have enforcement and urban rangers and forestry and natural areas. Give it the attention that it needs and it deserves. That is what I want to do as the next mayor.
Thank you, Senator. All right, let's get into a lot more specifics here. So we're going to start this round with Mr. Stringer and go in the same order, and we'll start with different candidates at different times. Mr. Stringer, so starting with you here. Quality of life is top of mind for every New Yorker, especially families. And many families are leaving New York City for places that are more affordable, have more access to green and open space. Parks are essential spaces. They are free to the public, and many offer free or very low-cost programming. By its own measure, the Parks Department's Vital Parks data show that just 62% of the city's parks achieve the goal set out by the agency for healthy, safe parks. What will you do to change that?
When I was controller, the audit I did that I think all of us were pretty outraged about was the fact that we looked at bathrooms in the city parks, and as the speaker talked about today, it was disgusting. And there was no maintenance, and there was a no maintenance plan. And then we started to look at different operations of the Parks Department, and we realized that the management there was simply not doing enough. I think we need a mayor who understands management, who has the experience and understand what agencies can accomplish. But we also need a quality of life deputy mayor who is going to end the silo of different agencies and start looking at metrics and data that can actually solve the problems on the street. We're going to talk a lot about parks, but you all see what's happening with the trash and the rats that are running around the city. In my neighborhood, the trash is a story high on most days, and the rats are walking upright. They come up to me all the time. No, they do. I'm going to be honest with you. They come up to me all the time. They say, "Can you really beat Cuomo?" And then I say, "Get out of here." We got to have a little fun, right? I mean, we do a lot of forms, but seriously. Deputy mayor for quality of life will be part of my administration. quality stat will
Thank you.
measure the metrics to make sure that we can solve some of the basic street problems in parks and around our city.
Thank you. Mr. Lander.
Three things I'm going to focus on. When I was in the city council, I passed a law, the local law 154 of 2015, which is a parks equity law to really see what is being spent in each park, which turns out to be very difficult to see. The data is now out there, but it is not being used as a management tool to make sure those parks that are getting underfunded on a per acre or per park basis get the resources they need. So that's going to be step one. Step two is that repair backlog. The repair backlog right now in our parks is $600 million. That's more than the Parks Department budget. We are just way behind. Even reducing it by half in the first term of the next mayor will be very ambitious, but that is going to be my target. Cutting the parks backlog by half in my first term. That focuses on the parks that really need that investment. And third, none of this can be done without reforming the city's capital process, which is just always behind and over budget. I created a capital projects tracker to get it done. I will use it as a management tool to achieve that reform.
Thank you. Senator Myrie, just to repeat part of the question, the Parks Department's Vital Parks data show that just 62% of the city's parks achieve the goal set out by the agency itself for healthy, safe parks. What will you do to change that?
Thank you. One of the ideas that many of the people in this room has fought for is the establishment of a director of the public realm. And that is something that I'd be very interested in doing as the next mayor, not just to have a top-down approach in how we empower our parks, but to give the power to the communities who understand exactly what they need out of their public spaces and out of their parks. I know that we are joined by Council Member Shaker, who has been one of the leaders in Jackson Heights on Paseo Park, as was mentioned earlier. And that has been a community-driven process that could convert an open street into a permanent linear park, something that came out of the pandemic, of the community coming together, came through organically. That is the type of support that we can provide from City Hall with a director of the public realm, in addition to ensuring that at least 1% of our city budget goes to our parks.
Senator Myrie, just quickly, there is a chief public realm officer that the current mayor appointed for the first time ever. Is that something that you would change that role in some way, or are you referring to a different position?
No, that is a role that I would like to empower with greater resources and less uncertainty, given how little we have directed our city's budget towards our parks.
Thank you. Speaker Adams, over to you.
Thank you. As the first woman mayor of the city of New York, it's going to be to my advantage to know what's going on in real time. And what I can tell you that no one else is speaking about is that the head count is low in the Parks Department because of what this mayor has done in cutting headcount and creating pegs that have grossly affected our Parks Department in many, many negative ways. So what I would do, firstly, is get our headcount back. And that's one thing that we're actually doing in real time right now with the city budget. We've got at least 5 lines right now dedicated to restoration for our Parks Department. The top is to put back that head count that the mayor has taken away. We are allocating $32.5 million as we speak in this FY26 budget. So in coming in as the first woman mayor, I'm going to actually have already been there, done that. Don't need a manual, don't need a transcript, don't need a handbook. Have already been doing this stuff, and I'm doing this real time. I keep saying, just move me from one side of City Hall to the other, and let's do this thing right the way that it should have been done all along.
Thank you. Mr. Blake.
I think it's important for us to recognize that you have individuals who could have fixed this problem who have not, who are now saying to you that they can create and change things that have not had the opportunity. So to the question, there's very specific things we can be doing, we need to be doing. First and foremost, yes, we have to make sure we're collaborating with our nonprofit partners to be able to do more work within your parks. Too often, we're not actually reimbursing them fast enough. Second, we have to address what's going on around public safety and mental health concerns, because if you are going out into the community and you're wondering if you're able to be in that space because we're not providing overdose prevention centers nearby and opioid settlement funds, it's hard for you to actually engage and feel safe and engaged in that community. Third, we have to be more intentional that we already have a $114 billion budget. The fact that it's not happening right now is not that there's not money, it's the lack of will. So when we start talking about these questions, you have to ask yourself, if someone is saying that they would have done and they have not, why? I am laying out to you the path on how to pay for it, the examples on how to execute that, and then the track record, what we did with Green Bronx Machine to demonstrate that it can be done
Thank
when
you.
I'm your mayor.
Thank you. Next question. We're going to start with you, Senator Myrie. All right. The Trust for Public Lands Park Score of 2024 shows that neighborhoods of color have 29% less park space than white neighborhoods. Specifically, what will you do to close this gap, build new parks, and ensure communities that need them the most have access to green space? Senator Myrie.
Yes, so I was born and raised in Central Brooklyn, but my Senate district also spans Central Brooklyn. Before redistricting, I used to represent Brownsville and parts of the east section of Brooklyn, where our park access was not nearly as robust as it was on the western part of the district. And this is, to me, an injustice for several reasons. One, we all know the benefits of our parks and being able to access it, but there are also climate mitigation implications for us not having green spaces in less affluent areas and predominantly Black and brown. I would like to invest more capital in building parks, but we also have to support the community members that are already trying to do this work. There is uncertainty and instability in their resources, and I'd like to change that as the next mayor. And I want to ensure that we are investing the capital, giving capital assessment process that would allow for us to directly pinpoint where these needs are and for us to put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you. Speaker Adams.
Yeah, again, this is work that's in progress for us on the city council. We have passed a lot of legislation. I can tell you that I'm from Southeast Queens in Jamaica, and this is an issue for me, so I take this personally. I take this to heart. So what I have already started to do is take a look at micro parks. Take a look at vacant lots and empty spaces where there can be alternatives to our park situations, particularly, and I say I legislate the way that I live because I do this thing rather selfishly at times, most of the times, because I am my own neighbor, I'm my own best constituent, and knowing what I want, knowing what my neighbor wants. So if I can't give my neighbor what they want, then I have no business representing them. So in taking a look specifically in my area, other areas like me, getting creative about those things and getting innovative about the spaces that are available. Those are the things that I've already done. This is the way that we've led in the council. And again, this is the way that I will expand on the work that I am doing. Let's just bring it over and do more because the power is in the purse strings, and that is with the mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Blake, specifically what we do to close the gap and build new parks and ensure communities that need them the most have access to green space.
As a Bronxite, I'm the recipient of consistent environmental injustice by the name of a man of Robert Moses. And so when we ask again to the question, there's an intentionality that has existed in this city that Black and brown communities have repeatedly been the recipient of institutionalized racism when it comes to environmental injustice. We've seen it from parks, we've seen it from highways, we've seen it with bridges, we've seen it in our communities over and over again. So to your question, first, I would make sure that we create the legal protections that we can actually implement equity at scale in the face of a Donald Trump era where they are clearly trying to attack anything that's happening in Black and brown communities. Second, we have to be more intentional that we ensure that we don't perpetuate environmental injustice, where we've seen what we should look at in Brooklyn, for example, the Make McGinnis Safe is an example. Instead of having large commercial trucks going through streets, have them under BQE, use smaller vehicles, so that therefore, when we build out more parks and more opportunities, it's actually safer and more environmentally friendly. Third is the intentionality of making sure that when we build this out, we hire from the community so that you show that environmental justice leads to economic justice all at the same time. That is the approach around equity that has to exist, and that's what I would do when I'm your mayor.
Mr. Stringer.
I remember when I investigated the amount of playgrounds per X thousands of children and wanted to see where the playgrounds were within the parks. No surprise, for every 8 parks for kids of 10,000 kids or more in Brooklyn, Bronx had 5 parks for every 10,000 children. And you can imagine that in the wealthier communities, there were a whole lot of parks and playgrounds for all the kids. And there is an inequity in this process. When I was controller, I held the city agencies to letter grading them based on their spend with women and minority-owned businesses. I tell you why that is relevant for parks, because when you invest in the business community, when you invest in small businesses, you also have the ability to build a coalition to fight for fair funding. And I will go back to doing that as mayor, making sure that we don't just certify women and minority-owned businesses, but we also spend with communities of color, because that means people are going to lift up the economy in different communities, and that's better for our parks, for our playgrounds, and for the children who will get the benefit of that economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Lander.
We created a fair share dashboard in the controller's office. It's a great map that shows which communities are under-resourced across the different kinds of land uses, including parks. There's supposed to be a policy that the 1989 charter and Mayor David Dinkins put in place to say every time you do a land use action, you need to look at these issues of fairness, but we aren't doing it. I've proposed a set of reforms that will bring that fair share model back into New York City. Every time we make a land use decision, we need to be focusing on it. Second, plazas and open streets are a great opportunity for open space equity, but we're not implementing it in a way that gets that done. We're basically letting neighborhoods that have a lot of extra civic capacity do plazas and open streets. There was a great program called the Neighborhood Plaza Partnership that Laura Hansen, who is here, created. It takes some resources to make sure those neighborhoods that need some grant funding to make it happen can do it in low-income communities. And finally, our pools, our public pools are mostly in low-income neighborhoods, Red Hook and Sunset Park and the Bronx and Upper Manhattan. They should be open on Memorial Day, and it shouldn't be going through like an airport security line to get into a pool. It ought to be food vendors and music and community activities. Those could be much more vibrant park spaces with more time than
Thank
they
you.
are.
This round, we're going to start with Mr. Blake. Given the complexity and inefficiency of the capital process, has been raised a couple times already tonight, building new parks and building new infrastructure within existing parks has proven to be a significant challenge. How will you ensure new parks and capital projects move quicker and cheaper? And please be specific.
I've stated that within my first 100 days, we would declare an emergency on the process that exists right now of the delays in terms of executing on contracts, as well as how do we actually implement on infrastructure itself. There's too much bureaucratic delay that doesn't make much sense, that's hurting our city right now. That means we have to make sure we're very intentional around the investments around our future capital projects. Third, we have to think about the efforts that are ensuring that are a part of our community. We see out there in Queens where Roy Wilkins is an example. How do you make sure that the community is a part of the table, but you have a greater transparency around the efficiency around that? We are not seeing the budget meet our values for the moment. When we understand and recognize that, in particular for environmental justice, that emissions do not come from vehicles alone. The greatest amount of emissions actually come from buildings. For us to have the smart city that we deserve, we have to have a greater investment around our capital and our collaboration around public-private partnerships. This is all very personal for me in many different degrees. It's an effort that I led, not just within the White House, an effort we led within the Assembly, and it's an effort that we will lead to give us a chance to be your mayor.
Mr. Stringer.
So the reason I don't like having a public realm officer or a rat czar is because it's performative. No disrespect to those who hold those positions, but it's just performative. We need to rebuild from within our city agencies, Parks Department, any city agency that has a procurement problem. I did battle with the de Blasio administration over procurement contracts that wouldn't come to our office for approval, not-for-profits who were put in jeopardy, projects that were delayed, audited the Parks Department. They were one of the worst. And part of the reason is people in government, mayors, it's easier to be on Twitter than actually build out a procurement process. And we need an experienced mayor who knows how to hire, who knows how to rebuild the complicated parts of this government. We should not be in a situation where projects are delayed for years and years and years. When mayors go to Albany with the tin cup, when the city council approves projects, the job of the mayor is to just get it done and then come back for more. And we have not had a government that values that kind of management intensity.
Thank you.
And I think it's time to put that experience to work.
Just very briefly, Mr. Stringer, on those positions, they're created with the goal of coordinating among agencies and sort of trying to break down the silos that sometimes exist between agencies. Are there other people that need to do those jobs in your view? So you eliminate those positions? Just 30 seconds.
It's a very good question. So I think the people who should perhaps replace those figurehead positions. Maybe we start with the mayor who governs and a couple of deputy mayors, and maybe we move this into City Hall to get results, and then we measure those results through the lens of data and process so that we can actually accomplish things in 4 years. That's what I'm going to try to do.
Comptroller Lander, over to you on the capital projects, moving quicker and cheaper, and please be specific how you would advance reforms. Thank you.
I've been banging my head against the capital process in the city for like so long. I've got dents in my head. The first capital project I ever funded was a dog run at DiMattina Playground in Carroll Gardens. $250,000. Took 5 years. I helped bring participatory budgeting to New York City, and I was so excited that people got to vote on the projects. And then they were like, well, where could we see how long they would take? There wasn't even a capital projects dashboard. So I got a capital projects dashboard created. Every single New York City capital project is in it. But now no one in the Adams administration is using it as a management tool. So I will have a deputy mayor over the infrastructure agencies who uses that capital projects dashboard as a management tool and sees which ones are succeeding and which ones are not, where the pain points in the process are. One good example at Parks of something that's working is using expense dollars for pre-scoping so that you see what the project needs to cost up front rather than allocating a giant amount of capital dollars before you even know what the project is. There are real ways to reform this process and make it work better. And I can't stand the dents in my head, so I am going to get it done.
Thank you. Senator Myrie, over to you on capital projects.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So as I've mentioned, we need to do a couple of things. One, like other city agencies, allow for parks to have a capital needs assessment. But unlike other city agencies, I think it is really important to be on top of the process and the contracting. We have seen, for instance, in our school construction authority, that it has taken oftentimes too long and it's been too expensive to get the goods that we need for our public and our communities. I'd like to see that done differently. I think it's important for us to work closely with the city council. But some of these changes will require changes to our local laws. And we have had an administration that has had what some might characterize as an antagonistic relationship with the body and has not worked in partnership with the council members. And that is something that I'd like to do very differently as the next mayor. And then we also have the ability to utilize the bully pulpit. And to talk to folks about why it's important for this process to change. That is something that I would be doing as the next mayor.
And quickly, Senator Myrie, any one example of a local law you'd be looking to change with the city council on the capital process?
Well, I think that there are some granting capabilities that might require for us to change a law that would allow for a charter amendment. As has been mentioned, the nonprofit allocation process does not allow for the granting under a certain amount. It requires, I think, a burdensome process to go through. And I think we can loosen up some of those processes to allow for more efficiency in that process.
Thank you. Speaker Adams.
Thank you. I agree with Brad a lot on this. I'm a former Queens Library trustee. And when we take a look at capital projects in the city, this is a process that you might as well just, hang your hat up for 10, 12 years and just say, I'll be back tomorrow. Just put a sign on the door, say, I'll be back tomorrow. The expense alone, Scott mentioned the bathrooms in the park, the expense alone to put a bathroom in a park would blow your mind. That's what stopped me in Queens in a lot of different things. I'm doing these beautiful parks and beautiful projects and libraries and things, and then we get the cost of a bathroom. Millions of dollars to put a bathroom in a city park. Now marry that along with what I said earlier, with there not being any headcount to handle the work that's being done in the parks alone, because City Council has been fighting. We have been fighting and leading the charge where the mayor would not, to bring our parks up to speed, to get us closer to that 1% that is deserved, that is needed to handle park expenses. But it's bureaucracy. We had a thing called design build. I thought that was cheaper, then it turned out not so much all the time. But it's going to be up to me as the mayor to break through that barrier of that bureaucracy to determine what is best to get through to these capital projects once and for all.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We're going to start with Comptroller Lander on this one. Fire risk is rising due to climate change. We saw that starkly in New York City with record brush fires last year. That's just one very visual and meaningful example of how not maintaining natural areas puts New Yorkers at risk, but it also impacts flood resilience and air quality as well. Do you intend on prioritizing the increase of natural areas staff to better maintain these areas? And if so, how will you make this happen?
I mean, look, we're a little like goldfish in a fish tank on the climate crisis right now. We saw what happened when Sandy walloped us, but we're still actually more than 5 years away from completing the post-Superstorm Sandy capital projects for coastal resiliency. And then Ida hit us and we saw what a flash flood looked like. But on that day, 2/3 of the trucks that are supposed to clear the catch basins were out of commission, but it was just as bad as at Ophelia. And we did an audit that shows it's basically just as bad now because DCAS doesn't have the mechanics necessary to fix the trucks that clear the catch basins. So the next time there's a flash flood, it's going to be just as bad. And we're doing the same now with fires in our parks. We aren't planting the trees that actually resist fires. We aren't deploying staff to make sure that we're getting those areas ready. We aren't looking at CSOs and water retention. It's time to get ready for the climate crisis, and you have to do it when the sun is shining, not just when the flash flood is hitting.
Senator Myrie, over to you. Do you intend on prioritizing the increase of natural areas staff to better maintain these areas? And if so, how will you make this happen?
Yeah, so in short, yes, I think that this requires, like we've been discussing, just an investment from the city. This is, to me, a real question of putting our money where our mouth is. You know, in my own district, we had such a fire in Prospect Park, and this was something that could have hopefully have been prevented had we done some of the investments on the front end that we need to do. You know, we have not a climate crisis that is arriving at some point in the future, but one that is very much here today and impacting our parks and impacting New Yorkers on a constant basis. And I think we have to be proactive. As has been already mentioned, there have been cuts that have had to be restored by the city council on this front with personnel and the investment to designate natural areas. This is something that I'd be committed to investing in our executive budget as the next mayor.
Thank you. Speaker Adams.
Yes, you know what comes to mind first is the money that's been taken away from FEMA. And I know you all are reading about that, right? There's money that's been taken away from FEMA, and this is directly going to impact us right here in New York. It is going to hurt us. This is where those boxing gloves come on to fight Donald Trump and to fight this administration that is creating so much destruction and chaos. New York has to get ready to be Trump-proof. No matter who the next mayor is, we've got a target on our back already. So we've got to put those boxing gloves on. We've got to come together, and we have to Trump-proof New York City. I plan to do that by creating a resolve of funding that will help to thwart the funds that are being taken away right now from the federal administration. This is going to help us if we take care of home first, and we can do this. If we take care of home first, New York is the richest city in the nation. We can do this, but we have to have a mind to Trump-proof New York City.
Mr. Blake?
To the question, yes, would definitely make sure that we're expanding out and hiring more to address what's happening in fire. How do we do this? It's a deployment of our budget and our resources and prioritization around that. Now, very specifically, we have to take the steps of reallocating budget priorities that don't make sense in our city government right now. When you have $1.4 billion that's been spent at NYPD overtime that is not connected to public safety, we can find the resources. When we're having the conversations right now as it relates to the speaker, which I agree, where we have to go further when it comes to Donald Trump, I've been saying, as the first one to say this in the race, if they come for us and cut our funding, we should do the constitutional pushback of not sending our funds to DC. You have to check a bully. And that will allow you to have additional resources to be able to address the concerns that are happening here. And when we talk about fire prevention and the additional staffers are necessary, I don't just think about it from a parks perspective. I also think about it again as a Bronx site where we saw too often that fire was ravaging our buildings and our neighborhoods in that regard. And so it has to be a totality of it. To your question, Ben, on the how, it is actually addressing and increasing budget priorities to do that for that hiring.
And Mr. Stringer, over to you on natural areas staff and maintaining these areas and how you will make it happen if you are committing to that.
I was full on when Sandy hit as Manhattan Borough President. And we ran downtown because we really thought we were losing the lower part of Manhattan. We saw people stranded in public housing, couldn't get their medicine because the elevators were out. We couldn't see where people were, and we didn't know what was happening to so many people. We were knocking on doors, giving out food in the hope that we could hear from seniors that they would answer the call. We have learned nothing from that experience. When I became controller, I did a public hearing in every Sandy impacted area, and hundreds of people came. They came with paperwork that made no sense. They came with false promises made by the government. They looked at us and said, but the consultants met with me and said I can get my house back and there's funding. It all wasn't true. OEM at the time could not run a 2-car funeral. They had no ability to respond to the crisis. Right now, God forbid, the same thing would happen. We need a mayor who's going to reorganize our priorities, stop overrunning our wetlands, come up with a real resiliency plan, and really save the city. Because as you all know, climate change is here and the crisis is here. This is not going to be something for 100 years from now. This is going to be part of our lifetime mission. And if we don't respond and organize a response from the next mayor, then we're going to be here many years later wondering what we did. And I'm committed to fighting this.
Thank you. We've been joined by Assemblymember Mamdani. Good evening. Thanks for joining. So we'll work you in, Assemblymember, in the order in this question, but we're going to start with Speaker Adams here, and then we will go to Assemblymember Mamdani, and then come back to our panel here, and then Senator Myrie will wrap us up on this one. Okay. A little bit of a long question, so stick with me. The Parks Department, and we've been talking about this a little bit already so far, some of us. The Parks Department has faced decades of disinvestment and is operating with thousands fewer workers than it did 40 years ago. Currently, budget cuts have resulted in the loss of nearly 800 staffing lines that have been eliminated since fiscal year 2023. The crisis in the city's parks, reduced safety and cleanliness, lack of maintenance, upgrades, limited programming, limited vision for expansion, and more, is directly due to insufficient staffing and a reliance on seasonal workers instead of a baseline permanent workforce. It's easy to sit on this stage or on this Zoom and try to win union and advocate votes by promising to increase funding for the Parks Department. Many have said it before, including the current mayor, who committed to 1% for parks, but has fallen far short of that. How exactly will you fix these workforce issues, and why should New Yorkers and New York's park workforce believe that you will do it if elected? Speaker Adams.
Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I don't mind repeating myself.
Please.
Project in the works as we speak right now. This city council under my leadership has already done that work for parks. We have already been the ones to restore the funding that this mayor has taken away that he actually promised the Parks Department, but he's been missing in action. So the city council had to step up and lead in support of our Parks Department. We're going to continue to do that. In 3 budgets, we've done it for 3 consecutive budgets, taking care of our Parks Department the way that it deserves to be taken care of, to ensure that our older adults, our children, our working families have parks to go to. I mentioned $32.5 million being put in this budget. That is one of 5 line items that that's already baked into the budget. So it's not something that's going to happen. It's something that is happening for FY26. I am going to continue to lead this council to prioritize our Parks Department because we have not had a partner in the administration that will do that. We will continue to step up and lead in this process. We've done it for 3 years. Fiscal year 26 is not going to be any different. We're going to do this. We're going to get it done, and we're going to make sure that the funding is there for our Parks Department.
Let me just ask you in 30 more seconds, if there are folks in this audience who give you credit for fighting some of those and restoring some of those positions, devil's advocate might say, but there has still been an elimination of a lot of these staffing positions. Why hasn't the council been able to be more successful in pushing back on the mayor?
Great question, and I love to answer it. The mayor's pegs did a number on us. There's a 2-for-1 in the pegs, so that was really a bit of a snow job when it came to taking workers away from New York City parks. So what Parks has been able to do is staff up one person for the two that were eliminated. So that still puts them underneath headcount. That is the snow job that is going on from the other side of City Hall. That is something that the City Council cannot handle. But when I'm mayor, I'm going to handle that for you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Mamdani, let's bring you in on this. Easy to say you'll increase funding for the budget. How will you address these overall workforce issues and staffing issues? And why should New Yorkers and New York's park workforce believe that you will actually do it if elected?
You know, I think an idea is only as good as its implementation, and I am sincerely committed to the implementation of each and every idea that we've put forward over the course of this campaign. But as you've said, Eric Adams also ran in 2021 with a promise to allocate 1% of the city's budget to our parks, and instead he has put it at closer to 0.6%. And this is something that is part of his legacy, but also is a part of a larger legacy of parks having decades of disinvestment, thousands of fewer workers, with just since 2023, 800 staffing lines being eliminated. You know, part of this is political will. Part of this is also a recognition of the fact that right now, of New York City Parks' $618 million budget, only 11% of it comes from its own revenue streams. And I am very interested as the next mayor of this city to explore a number of additional revenue streams that would be directly tied to the funding of our Parks Department, ensuring that it is not subject to the same kind of cruelty that we have seen it be subject to when it comes to Mayor Adams's leadership. I think there are interesting suggestions when it comes to the possibility of adding a community park surcharge to the RPTT, when it comes to a park dedication fee to support parks care and maintenance. These are the kinds of things that will enable us to not just fight back against Mayor Adams's legacy of austerity, but to go beyond that to ensure that we resurrect the fixed post staffing model. And, oh, I'm sorry.
Coming to you. Sorry, there might be a little delay on the Zoom, so you might not have heard me jumping in there, but.
Oh, no, I did not. Could you repeat that?
Oh, no. Just a little delay on the Zoom. I think I was trying to jump in to wrap you up, but you might not have heard me. No worries. Mr. Blake, coming to you.
Absolutely. This question is rooted in what did you do when it was difficult to actually make something happen? And so to the question, I'll start with the track record and then what the vision shall be. As a small business owner myself, leading our efforts at Atlas Strategy Group, Next Level Sports Entertainment, Kairos Democracy Project, it's important for me to be very focused on how do we help people. As the leader who had the prompt pay bill in the assembly, which was a bipartisan bill that we paid businesses faster that were contracted in New York State, when we created the My Brother's Keeper program, when we co-led the effort around Raise the Age, where we delayed the budget to make sure there was actually justice that happened for communities of color. To your question, this is the epitome of what will you do when it is difficult? And when it comes to parks, when it comes to hiring people and making sure that people actually have the protections in place, you can't just keep saying, I would have worked on it. You have to show people what did you do when it was difficult and hard. And to that point, whether it be supporting Green Bronx Machine and concretely to end here, during COVID, when we worked with World Central Kitchen to feed New Yorkers across this city, when government officials were not doing that.
Thank you.
If you want to figure out what I would do, assess what I was doing when it was difficult. That's how you know what I'll do as your mayor.
Mr. Stringer.
Yeah, Eric Adams got it all wrong. He thought that by gutting city agencies, including the Parks Department, this would show him to be fiscally responsible. It was very dumb. And it was a fake budget dance, right, Speaker? It was not real, the deficits. But I will tell you the fiscal reason why the next mayor has to invest in parks and other agencies. It has to do with claims against the city. We pay out an extraordinary amount of money on claims because people sue New York City over and over again for the same thing. And when you look at the Parks Department, I'll give you one example. People were suing the city of New York for millions of dollars because trees were literally falling on them, some with very dire consequences. I initiated something called ClaimStat, where I evaluated these claims and analyzed them for ways that we can prevent people from suing over and over again. And what we found was that if you want to prevent a tree from falling on somebody, then prune the tree with a worker who knows how to do that. You save millions of dollars and you hire people.
Thank you.
This was true with police complaints and precincts. If you solve the problem, no one sues us. We save billions. We reinvest it in our workforce.
Thank you. Controller Lander.
Thank you. I'm the only candidate in the race, I think, with platforms both on reforming the city's budget process to end the foolish budget dance and on civil service reform so we could have a world-class city workforce. And I can't promise that anyone has read either of those platforms because they're pretty in the weeds, but you're looking for a mayor who is focused on those things. The way the whole budget process works now, where the mayor makes a bunch of kind of feinted fake cuts to then force the council to do restorations, and that's what the whole budget process is about, does not need to be how we budget. You need a mayor who's going to put an honest budget out, baselines the critical functions like the staff in the Parks Department, and then works with the council on how we actually meet the targets that we have. And similarly on the workforce and civil service reform, there are so many titles that are stuck in decades-old tests, and we can modernize it in a way that will make the department run better. And boy, we are unfortunately headed for hard times, not just the Trump budget cuts, but the tariffs are likely to push us into a recession. You need a mayor who knows how to make the budget work and get everything we can out of the workforce that we have, which is an amazing workforce.
Senator Myrie, over to you on fixing these workforce issues and why people should trust that you'll do it.
Yeah, I think this is a question about what is your ability to fight for working class New Yorkers. And in my own district, I have stood up for members that work for the public, whether that was under the governor's proposal to shut down SUNY Downstate, the only state-run hospital in the entire city of New York. We fought very hard, and we used every tool at our disposal. We used legislation, we got that passed, but we also stood up and rallied to put pressure and to get the outcome that saved hundreds of jobs at that hospital. And at the Brooklyn Museum, with many DC 37 members, there were threats of layoffs and threats for people to no longer have a future at the museum. And we stood up and we stood with them. We worked closely with the members and the workers, and also communicated to management about the importance of keeping these employees at this institution. So I would urge people to look at my record of fighting for working class New Yorkers. That is the best indication of what I'm going to do as the next mayor.
Thank you. All right, we're going to do just a 10-second follow-up on that round. So this is just a very brief answer from each of you, please, in the same order. And that is, the question is, hiring seasonal lifeguards has been an issue for years. Pools and beaches unable to open fully to the public at times. What is one or two specific fixes, no backstory, just quick fixes, one or two specific fixes that you would pursue to address this issue of lifeguard shortages? Speaker Adams.
Yes, thank you for that. And again, it's a work in progress. City Council has already been forward thinking about the lifeguard shortage. We need to take a look more at our young folks and incentivize them to do this work, to get out. They like to swim, but guess what? We've got some areas that do not have the same abilities that others have, with no access to public pools, no access to learning how to swim. So the City Council has actually enacted legislation to bring forth swimming lessons.
Thank you. Perfect. One specific answer there. Assemblymember Mamdani, one or two things to fix the lifeguard shortage.
Last year, we had 930 lifeguards. We need at close to 1,400. And one of the clear, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Solutions.
Yes, just giving the context here. But the solution is in the salaries that these lifeguards are paid. And our campaign has put forward a proposal that there be a minimum wage of $30 by 2030. Lifeguards deserve at least that, if not much more. And that is going to be helpful towards remedying the staffing shortage.
Thank you. Mr. Blake, one or two solutions.
You have to address the transportation challenges to make sure that more Black and brown kids who haven't had the opportunity to learn younger can actually get engaged with swimming earlier. Second, you actually then have to partner up with schools and community centers to be able to teach people earlier so that they have a better pathway around the necessity of becoming a lifeguard later on.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
Can't save lives if you can't swim. And we've got to make sure that our kids have the training and create the excitement for them to have the ability to want to be a lifeguard, to want to dedicate their summers. We don't do that. This has been a Parks Department failure. And it's been for a lot of other reasons, but I don't want to get,
Thank you.
knocked down by Ben, so I'm going to stop.
Comptroller Lander, one or two solutions, lifeguard shortage.
I mentioned a collaborative process for civil service reform. There are more than 1,400 qualified people to be lifeguards, and we've got to be able to broaden the pool so that we can guard the pools.
And Senator Myrie.
Yeah, Council Member Shaker released a 5-point water safety plan. One of the components of that was a junior lifeguard corps. That is something that I'd like to be supportive of.
Thank you. All right, next question. We're going to start with Mr. Stringer here. With safety in parks continuing to be a top voter priority and staffing levels of parks enforcement patrol at historic lows, what steps will you take to address the significant safety concerns such as crime, used needles, encampments, broken light fixtures, and more that are present at parks? Mr. Stringer.
The beauty of our parks for so many years was the ability for people in so many different communities to go out, jog at night, not look over your shoulder. It was a very safe space for a very long time. That has changed. And part of what we have to do is recognize that we need to increase enforcement. We need to hire more police officers. We're at the lowest police count than we've been in a generation, and we need to hire from the community. We need to rethink the policing strategies. But here's what's happening. We can't find the young people like we can't find lifeguards. We can't find young people who want to be in the PD to protect families and park workers because they don't want this job. 8,000 people applied to be a police officer. That means we'll get 1,000 cops. You know how many people applied to be a sanitation worker? 60,000. So the next mayor has got to look at this issue through multiple lenses, protecting all communities, especially communities of color, but also managing back this department that has seen incredible corruption from the top, not at the bottom, but from the top down. I am prepared to work on those issues to protect our parks and our citizens, people in the trains. We need to do that.
Thank you. Comptroller Lander, safety in parks.
The number one commitment I'm making in this campaign is to end unsheltered homelessness for people with serious mental illness in New York City. We do not have to be a city where several thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleep on our subway platforms and the stoops of our buildings and in our parks. We don't have to be. We're talking about 2,000 people tonight who are mentally ill, sleeping unsheltered, including in the parks and on the ways to them. Meanwhile, there's 2,500 vacant supportive housing and SRO units in the city that those folks aren't eligible for because we require that they go to shelter first. Meanwhile, cities around the country are using this model called Housing First, Houston, Denver, Salt Lake City, that works 70 to 90% of the time to take people directly from that sidewalk or park into that vacant supportive housing or SRO unit with the services that they need to succeed. We use that model to end unsheltered homelessness for veterans 15 years ago in this city. We can do it for people with serious mental illness now. That will be a safer city and a more humane one.
Senator Myrie, over to you on safety in parks.
Yeah, this is in part a personnel problem. And so as we've been discussing, it's important for us to invest in the hiring of more park enforcement patrol officers. But I also think this is a young people problem in that we tell our young folks all of the things that they shouldn't be doing, but do not give them the option for the things that they should be doing. And one of the things that I have proposed in my campaign is After School for All. That is not just about providing relief for working parents, but is also a public safety tool because we know that in the after school hours, that is when our kids are getting involved in things we don't want them to get involved in. Let's give them a safe place to be so that they can be empowered and also to help keep the community safe.
Thank you. Speaker Adams.
Thank you. I think Senator Myrie is right on target with this because we've baked into the city council legislation also to build a pipeline for youth coming out of the justice system to move into opportunities available at the Parks Department and other things. And I'm also, because I know I got to be brief and I'm a hard stop out in just a couple of minutes, we've baked into the budget. I mentioned 5 different points where the parks is taken care of, if you will, in this FY26. This is another one where we're talking about safety. We're talking about officers to patrol. That is baselined in this FY26 budget as well. So we will have enforcement. We will have that budgeted into FY26, baked in and baselined for the Parks Department.
Assemblymember Mamdani on safety in parks.
As a number of my colleagues have stated, the Eric Adams budget cuts to the Parks Department since 2021 have corresponded with a rise in major felonies and property crimes. And there are two clear ways that my administration will take it on. The first is that we put forward a proposal a few weeks ago to create a Department of Community Safety. And as part of that department, we will overhaul the Be Heard program, which will work closely with New York City Park staff to address mental health crises. Second, we have seen both in Philadelphia and across the country that you can reduce crime by caring for parks and increasing urban biodiversity. That is part and parcel of how we have to take on this crisis of public safety and ensure that every New Yorker is delivered the safety that they've been denied under this administration. And part of that has to do with the very lighting fixes that you were speaking about in the prompt of the question.
Thank you. Mr. Blake.
As a dark-skinned Black man, I love Scott, but I got to counter something. More cops does not lead to better safety automatically. Okay? We have to be clear that you need better policing to do this properly. How do we address this? It's a multi-pronged approach. First, you increase lighting opportunities, not just in our parks and our neighborhoods, because when you have increased lighting, you have increased safety. Second, for the mental health concerns that are happening, you have to have overdose prevention centers. You equally have to address involuntary confinement and draw down funding for opioid settlement funds so that you can actually help the individuals that are struggling. Third, we have to have increased street patrol from our officers that are out there, but they are not been trained on mental health. Use mental health professionals to address mental health, to do that properly and thoughtfully. When you do that intertwined, then you can actually have a greater imagination around public safety. What we don't need is to go back to stop and frisk. What we don't need is a scenario where Black and brown and low-income communities are wondering if you can go outside and will you be safe? Because it's not just intertwined about you sitting in the park. It's also for our immigrant brothers and sisters right now who are terrified about walking outside their homes and will they get back home? And so at the end of the day, when we talk about your parks and your public safety, it's about humanity and accountability. That is the vision I'll have when you have Mayor Blake leading next year.
Thank you. Speaker Adams will make this your last question. Can you do one more? You got 2 minutes till 7. We'll get you out of here at 7. All right.
I'll take
Say a little bit, please, about how you might organize and manage your cabinet to empower your deputy mayors and parks commissioner to carry out your vision for parks. And would you retain the previously mentioned chief public realm officer, a relatively new position that advocates have fought for years that was adopted during this administration? So talk a little bit about how you'd set up and manage your cabinet, deputy mayors, parks commissioner, and potentially keeping or not keeping the chief public realm officer, please.
I love this question, so I'll stay for the 7 on the dot.
I didn't give you a choice, did I? Sorry.
You didn't.
Sorry.
You didn't.
Go ahead.
This is a great question, though, Ben, and thank you. I will manage my administration the same way that I've managed the city council, and that is to bring in people that have experience. My committee chairs have experience in doing what they're doing for those appointments that I've given them to. Rita Joseph out of the DOE for decades. Pierita Sanchez out of housing for a very, very long time. Althea Stevens, youth is at the heart of everything she does. Mercedes Narcisse is a registered nurse. Shekhar Krishnan comes out of the world of knowing that parks is his heart. So my cabinet is going to be comprised of individuals that actually know the job that they're doing before they ever get to the job of being a part of a mayoral administration. I will not be bringing in cronies. I will not be bringing in corruption, people that have baggage that I just owe, a friendship to. That is not going to be a part of the Adrienne Adams administration. It is going to be based on who knows what and who can deliver the best for the people of the city of New York. That is what I'm going to do as the first woman mayor.
Thank you. Assemblymember Mamdani, we'll let you, we'll go to one of our Zoom participants while you make your way. Thank you. Assemblymember Mamdani, talk a little bit, please, about organizing and managing your cabinet if you're elected mayor to empower deputy mayors, parks commissioner, and whether you'll keep the chief public realm officer or not to enact your vision for parks.
Yes, I think the chief public realm officer has been helpful. I think it speaks to the need to cut through the silos that are often endemic in city government. And as passionate as I am about public goods, I'm equally passionate about public excellence. And what we've seen under this mayoral administration has been an opting for patronage over principle time and time again, with one of Eric Adams's close hires saying the memorable words of "where are my crumbs?" And too often that's what New Yorkers have been forced to live off of are those same crumbs. Now, what we need to do is put together a mayoral administration that moves beyond the approach of Eric Adams of understanding a mayor as a monarch, and instead put together a team that is the best and the brightest across the world, and bringing in expertise, bringing in competence, and also asking not for alignment across every single issue, but rather just alignment on the fulfillment of the vision for that specific agency. And I think that's critical as we ensure that we actually deliver on this platform that we're all running on.
Thank you. Mr. Blake, organizing and empowering your cabinet, and whether you'll keep the Chief Public Realm Officer or not.
The role will be kept. We will assess who is best for these roles as we would for all things. I do think we have to take a step back when over here, council members state about the selections of the mayor. They confirm these people that were in these positions. So you can't say that after the fact. I do think that's important for us to be attentive on that to the degree. So when we think about the
Sorry
vision.
to interrupt. There's only a couple of council confirmed
Fair.
positions in city government.
But you can't just selectively keep saying one or like everyone was a crony, right? I think that happens too often in these conversations itself, right? We have to be very attentive on what is the decision-making one would have. So who is best qualified, who has the capabilities, and very concretely, does that individual have experience managing people, managing a budget, and implementing a vision, especially in the environment that we're in, where there will be federal cuts. There will be cuts that will, of course, that would be impacted from the state, but you still have to ensure equity. And so to the question, to the degree, it's about understanding that someone has the ability of achieving all three so that you also have a much more transparent process of the people that are being recommended and also the people that actually take on these roles.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer.
I've been in an elective office for 29 years, and I'm going to give you one secret of success, and that is elected officials. I don't know if you agree with me, but they don't know everything, right? And mayors don't go to school to be mayor. So the success of an executive, whether you're the controller, whether you're the mayor, is in the company you keep and the capacity you build. So when you have ideas and you make promises, as we all do tonight, at the end of the day, it's not the individual who's going to implement this. It's the people you bring into government. That is what I've done best through my public career. I reorganized, re-envisioned the Manhattan Borough President's Office, basically created community-based planning that resulted in tremendous affordable housing, but also a reform of the community board process that was merit-based. When I was controller, we literally reimagined the office. I took that office that was hanging by a thread, the back office of the pension fund, cleaned that up, consolidated one investment pension meeting. This is in the weeds, but it ended up giving us a 9% return and was a historic moment for the pension fund. And while we were doing all the hard government work, we also made sure we divested $4 billion from fossil fuel.
Thank you.
First. We divested from private prisons. That wasn't easy. We divested from gun manufacturers. I say this because none of this could have happened without capacity. And the next mayor has to have the experience to have capacity.
Comptroller Lander.
I would keep the position of Chief Public Realm Officer, and I think very highly of Yating Liu, I've worked with for a long time, but let's be clear, that role has to be empowered. This administration has one, but they totally botched the outdoor dining and the Dine Out NYC, public realm activation, have really botched open streets, public realm activation, have not invested in that neighborhood plaza partnership that makes them possible in every borough and in neighborhoods throughout the city, have failed to really support Paseo Park. So I will be a mayor that has a Chief Public Realm Officer, but also passionately cares about the public realm and drives the infrastructure work, the capacity work, the community support work that actually delivers a vibrant public realm. I've also committed to submit more of my commissioners and top appointees for council approval because I'm confident I'm going to appoint people that are great and the council will approve, and you can see it in the agencies I've run. I've got the best procurement person in city government in my controller's office, the best budget person in city government in my controller's office, and the organizations I've run before like Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center are thriving long after I left.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
Thank you. You know, I would yes to keeping the role, but I think it's important for New Yorkers to have a mayor that is not only going to appoint the right people with demonstrated leadership capability and demonstrated expertise, but you got to give them the agency to actually do the job. Deputy mayors, the folks in my cabinet, I recognize that I'm not going to be the director of operations for every single city agency, but that I have to be comfortable with having the folks on the front lines of the job to do the job. And so I would be marshaling input and feedback from the public and private sectors on people that have demonstrated the right level of expertise and innovation, give them the ability to do that, and not micromanage them, have them execute the vision that we've laid out.
All right, we have one more full question here that each candidate's going to answer, and then we have a quick lightning round that we will wrap up with. So final full question for your 1-minute answers. And actually, we're going to start with you, Senator Myrie, so stay on the mic. New York City is set to release its first ever urban forest plan in fall 2025. This was required by a local law passed by the city in 2023. So the first ever urban forest plan is coming in the fall. It calls for an expansion of the urban canopy from 22% to 30% to support the goal of mitigating extreme heat and advancing equity. How will you ensure the successful implementation of the urban forest plan? And please be specific.
Thank you for the question. So I have in my state Senate role, I introduced for the first time something called the Timbuktu Summer Institute for Climate Careers. And what that did was take young people from New York City up to the Adirondacks for 2 weeks in the summer to learn about what their future could be in helping to mitigate climate, the impacts of the climate crisis. But the truth is that we should not have to bring our kids to the Adirondacks for them to learn about what they can do. We have some of that urban forestry right here in New York City. So I would continue to do the work that I have done in the state legislature in ensuring that we have the programmatic support and that we can reach that percentage as required by the local law.
And coming to you now, Assemblymember Mamdani, on this question, implementing the urban forest plan that will call for the expansion of the urban canopy.
I think it's extremely necessary, especially as we see the crisis of extreme heat across our city. You know, Black New Yorkers are 2 times more likely to die of heat stress as compared to white New Yorkers, and parks offer a critical solution to this. I think one way that we ensure that this is actually done is by committing the funding necessary to this. And what I was speaking about earlier, the necessity of starting to create more direct revenue for parks and looking at Minneapolis as an example of the successful implementation of those kinds of revenue streams so that we ensure this isn't just an unfunded mandate, but rather it is something that we live up to and something that we deliver so that we see our city as a place where you do not have to sacrifice the possibility of green space in order to call it your home. It can in fact be fulfilled at one and the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Blake.
One of the elements that's essential here, because the impetus of this is how do you, of course, address heat in communities of color, is greater collaboration with NYCHA. You have to continue to expand out the funding and the efforts, and the pilot has been done around NYCHA. When you assess the importance of this, it addresses 2 different things at the same time. Number one, when you have 1 out of 8 New York City public school students that are homeless right now, the continual transient nature that is happening in our communities is intertwined, in which, why did they focus upon NYCHA? Because they saw that if they actually could address what's happening in those communities, you can actually address environmental justice in a practical and relevant way. Second, the necessity of the program is because of the extreme heat that is happening in these communities. And it is over and over again that there is actually not a safe haven and shade that is happening in Black and brown communities in greater degree. And so to your question, Ben, one specific element is to continue to expand out the pilot work that has been happening around NYCHA as it relates to this initiative, because by doing so, you will address not only the environmental injustice that's been happening, but you also can reduce heat concerns that are happening for communities of color that has been devastating in our communities over and over again.
Mr. Stringer, how will you ensure the successful implementation of the urban forest plan?
There's no doubt, after living through Sandy and so many other episodic events, that we have to do everything we can to combat climate change. It's not just divestment from fossil fuel, but it's also taking care of our the ability to have trees and forests, and the environment needs that so badly. But here's what I think matters in this mayor's race. Everyone is going to support a piece of legislation. It becomes very hard at the implementation stage. And I've lived through mayors who kept telling us by 2035, we're going to build 1 million units of housing. By 2045, the world will be safe and our democracy will be safe. By 2055, we're not going to be here. I don't want to break it to you. So the mayor, bad, by the way.
That was a little aggressive. man.
Wow, all right.
I'm just, no, and I apologize.
Scott got talking
Scott's got the
rats.
expanding the cemeteries
I mean,
plan.
man.
They like me. But seriously, we have to start measuring year by year. And we have to have a 3-year out-year plan, just like we have with the budget. We have to think about how we get to these places, because what happens is we ignore the first 4 years and then we start all over again.
Thank you.
This is a management issue. It's a serious one, but we think about the experience we'll need to implement all this work.
Controller Lander.
During Superstorm Sandy, the decades-old tree that was right in front of our house just leaned over and fell right on our home. And that was terrifying during the storm. It was there for a couple of days while we were waiting. And then finally, the Parks Department crew that does the job from forestry of cutting down those trees came out. And that was a time when there were a bunch of contractors from out of town, because obviously but we managed to get the Parks Department staff crew, and they were like incredible. It's like a martial art, like acrobatics that maybe we have some of them in the room. I don't know. So let's give it up for them. Actually, if we got some parks workers in the room, these were not the ones that cut down my tree. But one thing that led me to kind of dig in and learn a little more, because there've also been these stories you may have seen about how outrageously much we spend when we hire a contractor to plant a tree in New York City. So it is much more bang for the buck to have parks forestry workers do that work both in our parks, but also on street trees. We need 1 million more trees in this city. We would save money if we could grow forestry to plant them rather than contract at an outrageous price for them. Finally, though, I have to say I do contest the premise of the question, because the odds that Adrienne Adams actually delivers that plan by this fall, I think, is pretty slim. There's no true cost of living report. It's hundreds of days overdue. They haven't done the Commission on Racial Equality report. So the first thing I'm going to do as mayor is pick this up and get the forestry, the forest canopy plan done.
Thank you.
So we can then implement it.
Did you file a claim when that tree happened?
All right. We're at our lightning round, so we're going to move quickly here. Yes or no, or very short answers here. Let's start here with Assemblymember Mamdani. What's your favorite park in the city?
Astoria Park.
Senator Myrie, favorite park in the city?
Prospect Park.
Mr. Blake,
From the Bronx, Van Cortlandt Park.
Mr. Stringer,
Marble Hill Park, but my kids love Rockefeller Park.
Controller Lander.
Zellnor Myrie's right on this one, Prospect Park.
All right, starting here with Controller Stringer. The Trump Organization has said it is bidding to retake control of Woolman Rink in Central Park, given the company's conviction on multiple counts of criminal tax fraud. Should the city be entertaining the company's bid? Yes or no?
No.
Controller Lander.
Get the fuck out of here. Excuse me.
Assemblymember Mamdani.
No.
Senator Myrie.
No, and there's a great skating team in Harlem of some young women doing incredible work that could be using that space right now.
Mr. Blake.
Absolutely not.
Starting here with Mr. Blake, stay with you. There have been several ideas raised around alternative funding sources. Mr. Mamdani has been talking about this for parks, such as implementing a small surcharge on all stadium and arena tickets that would feed into park funding. What, if any, alternative funding proposals appeal to you the most? Just one or two things, if any.
We need to have a vacant apartment tax for any person that is actually not living in New York, so that we can generate revenue in a substantial way.
Mr. Stringer.
I think we need a Parks Commissioner who is going to be able to partner with people who are in the private sector to invest in our parks, and I think we can raise revenue that way.
Controller Lander.
Parks concessions are an opportunity to make sure there's more revenue that stays in the parks and is invested in them. All right.
Assembly Member Mamdani.
Okay, you got someone to get.
Adding a community park surcharge.
Just keep it to 1 or 2, please. Oh,
Little shade,
Oh,
man.
I'm sorry.
go ahead. We
Sorry,
didn't
could
get,
you say that again, Ben?
oh, just 1 or 2 ideas for alternative revenue sources.
I was thinking, I'll keep it to 1. Add a small community park surcharge to New York City's real property transfer tax. If we added even 0.25% of that on all of those transactions, we generate an additional $268 million annually.
Thank you. Senator Myrie.
I'd be supportive potentially of the arena ticket surcharge, but I also think we could be hiring more inspectors at OMB to go after the taxes already owed to us, and we could find some resources there as well.
Thank you. Starting with Controller Lander, 1/3 of New York City's parkland is forests and wetlands. Would you support funding to maintain and program a 300-mile trail system to ensure access to natural areas, thereby ensuring access to nature for millions of New Yorkers? Yes or no?
Yeah, I'd like to be first in line.
All right. Assemblymember Mamdani.
Yes.
Senator Myrie.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes, I'm married to a woman who plays tennis and 2 girls who play volleyball and basketball. So I need a chance to be outdoors. I have a chance to win at
Miss-
anything right now.
There's Stringer.
Yes.
Okay. Starting here with Mr. Blake, do you support making more schoolyards publicly accessible as playgrounds after school hours?
1000%. And it's one of the reasons why I said we didn't look at Paseo Park as an example, because if you do that, you give people a chance and kids
Thank
out to
you.
live outside.
Mr. Stringer, yes or no?
Yes, and I think we have to make inside the schools equally a priority and less about making basketball tournaments that adults play in at the expense of the kids. We have
Controller
to rethink
Lander.
that.
Yes.
Assemblymember Mamdani.
Yes, and I'll also make every school street an open street.
Senator Myrie.
Yes, and kudos to Council Member Gail Brewer, who commissioned a study on this and showed that it wouldn't be that much of an investment for us on the city budget.
All right, last 3 here. Starting with Assemblymember Mamdani. Speaking of playgrounds, what's your go-to game at a playground?
I love swinging.
Right. Senator Myrie.
What is it? Swinging?
We'll give you a
Is that what
minute.
he said? Yo, he said swinging. Like, what?
Like in the swing.
I mean,
Might have had a mic drop there.
I
I
mean,
think.
yo, pause.
In the swing.
So it did not
That's
come
worse than my
out
wrath.
at all.
We'll get control of the room here. Senator Myrie.
Sorry. I was more of a slide person as a kid, but certainly now I'm a hooper, so I'd love to play.
Getting better.
Hit the slide. Mr. Blake, go-to game at a park or playground.
I'm so thrown off by what he just did right there. Racquetball in the Bronx.
All right, Mr. Stringer.
Throwing the basketball to my 2 kids and watching them play.
And Controller Lander.
I'd like to bring back tetherball.
Tetherball, okay. Let's start here with Mr. Stringer. Well, we'll wrap up with this one. Last one here. Where's your favorite place to go swimming in New York City?
Ooh. Man, I don't have one.
Controller Lander.
I'm going to bring back morning lap swim at the Red Hook Pool. It's been
Okay.
canceled the last few years. We'll bring it back.
Assemblymember Mamdani, favorite place to go swimming?
Astoria Park, unless it's the Polar Plunge, in which case Coney Island.
Senator Myrie.
I'd say Sunset Park.
Sunset Park Pool. Mr. Blake.
I'm one of those Jamaicans that's not a good swimmer. However, when I do swim, La Central, which we just built out in the South Bronx.
All right. And now, Mr. Stringer, you have many options for your colleagues to take you. First one.
I ain't going swinging.
First swim. All right.
Oh, boy.
Thank
And
you.
it's time to end this.
That is time to end.
Okay.
Thank you to our candidates.
This was fun.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone here in the room, everyone watching by Zoom, everyone watching the recording afterward.
I woke up that
Thank you to Adam and New Yorkers for Parks,
It makes sense that the topic.
all the
This was fun.
coalition members.
It's true.
Night, everybody.